Hello and welcome back. In the last section, we looked at creation of the categories and also a little bit of error handling as well in terms of getting the duplicate category messaging across to the caller. Okay. The next thing that we want to do is we also want to see when we connect to the cloud database, which is the Cloud MongoDB, through Robo3T, whether we're able to see that or not. Let me head over to Robo3T here. And I'm going to go ahead and create, I thought we had created this connection before, but I'll go ahead and do that again. And in here, I will go back to my code base, essentially go to the env file and get the string here, which is the value for the database key. Let's see what we get here. So in here, I'm just going to go ahead and paste this and say click on from SRV. All the stuff is auto-populated for us here. If I do a quick test, it should give us 2 ticks essentially over here once it's done. Super, there we go. And our connectivity is good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give this a name, IndyCafe-DB. All right, and then go ahead and save this. Okay, so this is going to be available to us in future. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and connect. Okay, and it should essentially display our database and its collections and the contents in the collections here. Right now we should have only one collection, which is categories. Okay, and let's see. All right, so here we have the database, right, IndyCafe-DB. That's what we mentioned in our env file, if you recall. Let's go back to that. Yeah, this is the database that we specified, right? And that got created, and inside we have collections and we have categories here. Interesting thing to know is the Mongoose driver stores all the collections in plurals. Okay, so if you recall, our model was actually category and not categories, right? And the Mongoose driver went ahead and made a collection with categories. Okay. And another thing that you want to do is let's go ahead and explore this table and see if we have anything inside. And ideally we should have like 3 documents there right now, 3 Mongoose documents pertaining to 3 categories that we ended up created. And there you go. So essentially we have 3 documents in here. Okay, and some of these IDs and all that stuff are actually created by Mongoose, because _ID is the default Mongoose provided ID, which is generated automatically inside unless we specify it not to. Okay, so right now we have three documents. With this in place, we will move ahead and look at the next important aspect, which is the validation of data. Any creation of any object inside our system has to go through validation guardrails, right? Because we cannot just put any data that we like. I know that the database can to some extent enforce those restrictions, but we want to make sure we don't go all the way to the database if the data itself is incorrect or invalid in terms of not sticking to or complying to certain rules that we have set up for ourselves. Okay, so let's see how we can go ahead and then create the validation structure for our APIs. All right, let's head over to the controllers, and inside here I have the create category, I have the fetch category, and the way we do validation in Node.js, and we have certain libraries in npm. Let's head over to Google, and I'll say npm and look for a framework called Joy. Okay, so this is a very popular framework, and essentially it's used for validation in Express projects for data validation, and it's very handy as well. Okay, and take a look at it. Okay, so here I think it's quite comprehensive here. So here is how we use Joy. Essentially we require the Joy library, and anytime we have to essentially validate something, we say if it's username, it has to be a string, and that's how we specify that. And we also say it can be alphanumeric with a min of 3 and max of 30, and it is a mandatory field, right? This is how we can specify that. So let's go ahead and install Joy. I think to do that we just have to say npm i joy, and I'm gonna go ahead and split the terminal one more time. Okay, and in here I'm going to say npm I joy. Alright, let's pause for it to complete. Alright, so that's been installed. I am pretty certain it's going to be in our package.json. You can look for that. Yes, it's right here, joy. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a validation schema. Alright, though the documentation actually gave quite a few details which we skimmed over, which we glozed over. So after we specify the validation, then we can actually use the schema to validate our input, for example. So this is the schema, and we can call validate on that. And again, we also have a synchronous call here, which is validate async, which we can use with the await syntax. Okay, and then we also can specify certain messaging as well. I thought, let's see, schema.validate zero attempt. Okay, we'll take a look at that later, but first let's go ahead and create the validation schema and then try to validate that. And here I am back in the editor. Let's see what we can do here. I will head over to the source folder to begin with, and inside the source folder I'm going to create a new folder called validators, and in here I'm going to go ahead and create a new file called schema-validator.js. okay, and over here I'm going to go ahead and require in the joy library. Okay, I'm going to say const joy is equal to require joy, and after this I'm going to define a schema here. So that's going to be called const category schema. Again, this is a validation schema, not necessarily the DB schema, and just to make sure we have the differentiation spelled out appropriately and upfront. And I'm going to say it's going to be joy dot object. Alright, we have some auto suggestions here, which is nice, and I'm going to say I need a category name. Okay, that's going to be of type joy.string, of course, and it is also going to be required, and it's going to have a minimum length of, let's say, 5, not 50, and max of, I think we gave it 25 in our database, if I'm correct. And it is also going to be required. Yeah, I think we have it all covered here. Okay, super. And then we have to essentially export the schema. Okay, so I'm going to say module.exports is equal to category schema. Alright, and then next what we do is we go over to the controller and go ahead and essentially import this particular class, right? Let me go ahead and minimize this a little bit so we have a better view. I'll say const validation schema, I'll just say category schema is equal to require one level above validators, yep, that's the one, and we have schema validator here. Alright, super. And then what we can do is we can validate against the schema for our incoming data. Inside the try block, I'm going to say const result, okay, and I'm going to say await, and I'm going to call the category schema, a method in the category schema dot validate async, yep, and this is going to have our request done. Okay, super. And we'll give the result to the category here. So we should be good in here. And anytime there is a error with respect to, let's say, a data that's non-confirmed, this will throw an error, right? So let's see if it actually executes fine now. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and create a new category that's going to be, let's say, less than 5 characters. Okay, go ahead and create that. Alright, it says it's giving me a status of 500, which is not what I want because it's a generic error, right? So we need to take care of that. Let's say I give something that's more than 25. To type a lot here. Let's see. That's what it says. Length must be equal to less than or equal to 25 characters. Okay, so all the messaging is auto-generated, which is nice. So the only thing that we need to take care of right now is the status error. Let's see how we can go about it. Go over back to the controller, and every time the Joy throws an error, the Joy framework or the error handler throws an error, it comes over to our error block. Okay, and in here what we're gonna do is, and I think it must be thrown here as well if I'm correct. Yeah, so yeah, this is thrown here. This is the error from the Joy framework. Okay, so what we can check is, let's say if error dot is Joy is equal to true, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the error dot status to 422, which is essentially unprocessable entity, which stands for that. Alright, so that should be able to essentially handle the Joy related errors. Now let's give it another spin. I'll close this. Go ahead and send this request for post. Yes, no, I didn't get a 500, interestingly. Did we save it? I don't think we saved it. That could be the problem. Let's see if we ended up with any errors here, no compilation errors so far. Yeah, we're good here. Alright, so let me resend this. Go ahead. Yep, we get a 422 and the appropriate error message. Okay, super guys. This is looking pretty nice right now. We'll go ahead and do the dish models, schema, validation, and all the error validation associated with that. Okay, the dish is going to be complex because it also has the photograph or the picture that's associated with that. All right, and how we're going to handle that, that's another question. Okay, so we have come a long way here. We've created two APIs. One is for the get all, and another one is for the post, which is a create API. And I think there's one more API, which is the get by ID, which we'll take a look at in the next lecture. Okay, until then, let's take a pause.